The Blair Witch Project 1999 wasn't just another found footage horror flick. For years, fans have debated what's real and what's fake. But behind that grainy, shaky cam footage lies a story the studio never wanted you to know about. A different version of the film, one that was buried so deep, it's practically become a ghost story itself. They sold you on authenticity, but what they didn't sell you was the truth about what they cut to get it into theaters. These are 12 of the weirdest facts behind the Blair Witch Project, and hidden in them is the shocking truth that the studio didn't just market a movie, they engineered a real-life witch hunt. Number 1. The actors were genuinely lost. This wasn't a movie set. The directors Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez gave the three actors, Heather Donahue, Michael Williams, and Joshua Leonard, a GPS and a 35-page outline of the story. No script. Then they dropped them in the woods. For 8 days, the directors followed them at a distance, leaving notes and food caches, but the actors were mostly on their own. The panic you see, it's real. The hunger, real. The anger, totally real. That's the trick. They weren't acting scared, they were just scared. And this is where it gets weird, because to make that fear even more real, the directors would sneak into their camp at night and mess with things. Shake the tent. Leave weird stick figures outside. It's no wonder the lines between reality and fiction started to blur for the cast. But the real consequence of this method was the toll it took. Heather Donahue's famous crying scene with snot running down her nose. That wasn't movie magic. That was a woman pushed to her absolute limit. They broke her down to build the movie up. And number 2. The missing posters were real. While the three actors were lost in the woods, the filmmakers printed up thousands of missing posters with their faces on them. They plastered them all over the town of Burkittsville, Maryland, the real town where they filmed. They even listed a fake 1-800 number for people to call with information. Locals who weren't in on the joke started calling the police. They were genuinely worried. The police were not amused. What most people don't realize is that this wasn't just some clever marketing gimmick. It was the beginning of a campaign that would change movie advertising forever. They were blurring the lines before the movie was even finished. The consequence? The studio, Artisan Entertainment, saw what was happening and ran with it. They bought the movie at Sundance for $1.1 million and doubled down on the lie. They created fake websites, fake news reports, and fake documentaries. The truth is, the movie's success was built on a lie. But the biggest lie was yet to come, because the next part is worse. Number 3. The film's most famous prop was almost scrapped. The iconic stick figure bundle, the one Heather finds at the end, was a last-minute addition. The art department made it, but on set, the directors thought it looked too Hollywood, too polished. They almost tossed it in the fire. Here's the problem. It was the only prop they had for the climax. With no time to build a new one, a local crew member grabbed some sticks, some twine, and a piece of Josh's shirt and threw it together in about 5 minutes. That's the prop that terrified a generation. The one that was almost firewood. The consequence of this last-minute hack was that it looked real. It looked like something a disturbed person or a witch would actually make. It was raw and unsettling, but this rushed creation had a hidden cost. The bloodstains on the shirt were fake, of course, but the materials were so organic that by the end of the shoot, the prop was starting to rot and smell. It was cursed with its own kind of authenticity, and this is where it gets weird. Number 4. The actors were paid almost nothing. For 8 days of hell in the woods, being psychologically tormented by their own directors, the 3 lead actors were paid a grand total of $1,000 each. That's it. $1,000. They signed a contract that gave them a tiny percentage of the profits, but nobody, not even the studio, expected the movie to make a dime. The truth is, they were essentially guinea pigs in a filmmaking experiment. What were they thinking? Well, they were young actors hoping for a breakout role. They had no idea they were about to be in one of the most profitable independent films of all time. The movie went on to gross nearly $250 million worldwide. The actors did eventually get bigger payouts from their profit points, but the initial pay was insulting. It created a real rift between the cast and the directors that took years to heal. It was a studio panic move, locking them into a lowball deal before anyone knew it would be a hit. And that leads to the next number. Number 5. The movie was almost rated NC-17. The MPAA, the group that rates movies, had a huge problem with the language. They said there was too much swearing. too much F-bombs. The filmmakers were stunned. The whole point of the movie was that it felt real, and real people under that much stress swear. A lot. The studio went into a full-blown panic. An NC-17 rating is a death sentence for a wide release. It means less money, fewer theaters, so they had to make a choice: bleep the swearing or get a restricted rating. The filmmakers fought it, arguing that the language was essential to the realism. They lost. They had to go back and digitally remove a significant amount of profanity to secure an R rating. What most people don't realize is that the version we all saw is the clean version. The original cut, with all the raw, unfiltered dialogue, was locked away. That's the trick. They censored reality to sell you a real movie. The consequence is that a version of the film with its intended raw intensity is buried in a vault somewhere, and that leads to number 6. Rumored lost cut. The version with all the swearing wasn't the only thing that got cut. There's a rumored lost cut of the film that was shown to very few people before the Sundance premiere. Reports say this cut was longer, slower, and even more psychologically draining. Some crew members claimed it had a different ending, a much darker one. What most people don't realize is that the ending we all know, with Heather screaming in the corner of the basement, was a compromise. An alternate ending was shot where the filmmakers find the tape, play it, and see the witch for a fleeting second. Another one had them find no tapes at all, just the house. The studio and the directors ultimately decided that what you don't see is scarier. They chose ambiguity, but the original darker cut was simply vanished, scrapped. The consequence is that for over 20 years, fans have searched for this Blair Witch black version or the director's cut. It's become a holy grail of lost horror media. The truth is, it might not even exist anymore. It could have been wiped from a hard drive decades ago. But the idea of it makes the movie even more legendary, because the next part is worse. Number 7, the infamous Bloody Mary Easter egg. In the movie's final scene, as Mike is standing in the corner, you can hear a faint whisper on the audio track. If you crank the volume, it sounds like someone is saying, "Mary." For years, this was just a fan theory, but then the directors confirmed it. It's there. They added it in post-production, a tiny, almost subliminal detail. But why? The truth is, it was a nod to the real local legend of Bloody Mary, which was an inspiration for the Blair Witch character. It's a tiny thread connecting their fictional witch to a real-world fear. The consequence of this little sound effect is that it sent fans down a rabbit hole of analysis. People were rewatching the final scene over and over in dark rooms, with the volume cranked, trying to catch that whisper. It added another layer of mystery to a film already shrouded in it. It was a brilliant piece of audio trickery, but this is where it gets weird. The whisper wasn't even planned. It was a happy accident. A sound engineer was cleaning up the audio and found a strange vocal artifact on the track. It was probably just feedback or a crew member's voice, but they kept it. They turned a mistake into a piece of the puzzle. And that leads to number 8. Number 8. The town of Burkittsville hated the movie. The filmmakers chose Burkittsville, Maryland, because it had the right name and the right look. It was a tiny, sleepy town. They got permission to film there, and most locals were helpful, but when the movie became a global phenomenon, everything changed. The town was flooded with tourists. Fans were stealing the town's welcome signs. They were trespassing on private property, looking for the witch's house, which was just a rented set in a state park. The town became a haunted house attraction against its will. The locals were angry. They felt used. The town's council held meetings to figure out how to deal with the Blair Witch curse. The consequence was a major backlash. The town that gave the movie its name became its biggest victim. The filmmakers had created a monster, and it was devouring the very place that inspired it. What most people don't realize is that this real-world chaos was, in a way, the perfect sequel to the film. The fiction had bled into reality, just like it did for the actors. The studio, of course, loved the free publicity, but for the people of Burkittsville, it was a nightmare. And this is where it gets weird. Number 2. The hand cam footage was a technical nightmare. The whole gimmick of the movie is that it's found footage, shot by the characters themselves, but getting that authentic, shaky, raw look was incredibly difficult. The cameras were 16mm film cameras, not the lightweight digital cameras we have today. They were heavy and clunky. The actors had to carry them everywhere for 8 days. The directors gave them only basic instruction on how to use them. The consequence: a lot of the footage was unusable. It was too shaky, out of focus, or pointed at the ground. The editors had a nightmare job on their hands, sifting through over 19 hours of raw, chaotic footage to find the 81 minutes that made up the final film. That's the trick. They were looking for mistakes. The best takes were the ones that felt the most accidental, the most real. What most people don't realize is that a huge amount of the footage was shot by the actors themselves, but a significant portion, especially the more complex shots, was filmed by the directors hiding in the woods. It was a hybrid of found footage and traditional filmmaking, a secret they kept to preserve the illusion. And that leads to the next number. Number 10. The Heather's Diary website was a work of art. To sell the found footage lie, the marketing team at Artisan Entertainment created one of the first ever viral movie websites. It wasn't just a poster and a trailer, it was a deep dive into the mythology. It had fake police reports, fake news articles, and most importantly, Heather's found diary. It was a collection of her journal entries written by Heather Donahue herself, detailing the days leading up to the trip. It was chilling. It felt real. The website became a sensation. People spent hours reading through the lore, convinced it was all true. The truth is, this website did more to build the movie's legend than the trailer did. It was a new way to market a film, creating an interactive experience that blurred the lines between fiction and reality. The consequence is that it set the standard for every viral marketing campaign that followed. The Blair Witch Project didn't just pioneer the found footage genre, it pioneered internet movie marketing. And that leads to number 11. Number 11. The Sci-Fi Channel's Curse of the Blair Witch mockumentary. This was the masterstroke of the entire marketing campaign. A week before the movie hit theaters, the Sci-Fi Channel aired a 1-hour documentary called Curse of the Blair Witch. It looked and felt like a real documentary. It had interviews with experts, historians, and the parents of the missing students. It used fake footage and photos to build the entire backstory of the Blair Witch legend. It was so convincing that people actually called the Sci-Fi Channel to ask if the students were ever found. The consequence was mass confusion. The movie's release was no longer just a movie release. It was a cultural event. People were going to the theater not to see a movie, but to see the final footage of the missing kids. The truth is, this mockumentary, written and directed by the film's own directors, was the final nail in the coffin of reality. It sealed the deal. It made the lie undeniable. And that leads to the final, most disturbing fact. Number 12. The studio buried the original ending. And this is the one that connects everything. The ending we all know is terrifying in its simplicity. Heather runs into the basement, sees Mike standing in the corner. She screams, the camera drops, cut to black. It's perfect. But it wasn't the only ending. There was another one, a different one that the studio tested and audiences hated. According to production accounts, this alternate ending showed Mike and Heather being dragged away by an unseen force. You didn't see the witch, but you saw what she did. It was more explicit, more of a traditional horror movie ending. The studio panicked. They thought it gave too much away. It ruined the mystery, so they cut it. They buried it. The truth is, the studio didn't just choose a better ending. They chose a more profitable one. By leaving the witch completely unseen, they created a debate that has lasted for over 20 years. What is in the corner? What really happened? They didn't just make a movie. They created a mystery box that was never meant to be fully opened. And that's the shocking truth hidden in these facts. The studio's interference, the censorship, the marketing lies. It was all to protect the final, terrifying ambiguity. They didn't just bury a scene, they buried the definitive answer because the question was worth so much more. The Blair Witch Project became a legend not just because it was scary, but because it almost fell apart at every turn. It was a chaotic experiment in filmmaking and marketing, a low-budget project that stumbled into creating a new genre and a new way to sell a lie to the public. The conflicts, the censorship, the real-world chaos, it all bled into the final product, making it feel more authentic than any scripted movie could. They didn't just make a film, they orchestrated a cultural moment built on what-ifs and never-meant-to-be-seen footage. The movie's legacy is its chaos, a perfect storm of creative risks and studio panic that somehow created a masterpiece of psychological horror. Thanks for watching. Hit like, drop a comment with your favorite fact and person, and subscribe for more creepy movie secrets.